Okay, I'm on? I'm on. Great. So I hope you'll be all able to hear me. There's still a little bit of commotion behind me. But yeah, hi, welcome. Nice to be here again. I don't know if you remember, those of you who were here last year, I was talking about what's new in M. This time I decided to do what's new in Android. So we will talk about N. But, you know, Android and what's happening in Android is not all about the platform. And so for those of you who haven't had time to go through all the things we discussed at I/O, all the things that are happening with, you know, the tools and everything that we at Google are creating for you to enable you to create better apps, let's go through some new things in developer tools first. So you probably know, I hope you're all using Android Studio by now. Is anyone still on Eclipse? 2 hands. Okay, that's pretty good. Come talk to me later. What's stopping you from going to Android Studio? I'm curious to hear that. Yeah, so you probably all know Android Studio 2.0. We have this new instant run. We have the faster emulator with faster install times, the even physical hardware. That's all not very new things now. But right now we're at Android Studio 2.2, which is still in preview, and it has lots and lots of improvements. So I'm just going to go through a laundry list of things, and this presentation is more or less will be a laundry list of things that you hopefully haven't heard before and you will learn here. Also, I will not go really deep into those APIs because we have lots of blog posts and videos on every API in N, so that you can go home and after hearing about it here, you can actually go and in the piece of your own home, read those docs and really understand how to implement it. So let's get started. In Android Studio 2.2, we have a whole new packaging toolchain. So it's supposed to bring you the fastest build times possible for debug builds and the smallest possible file size for release builds. And to do that, the new packaging toolchain does a lot of things, like sorts files so that they don't differ from release to release, and the Play Store can calculate smaller delta file sizes. It zeroes out metadata in the zip files. It supports the new version 2 APK signing scheme, which is supported from Android N. It will make your install times up to an order of magnitude faster. So if you use the new tool chains, you will be you don't have to configure anything new. If you use the new tool chain in Android Studio 2.2, you will have smaller builds, smaller updates for your users, and faster install times. So, you know, it's in preview still, but once it's out, I encourage you to do it for your release build. There's a new constraint layout editor. So it's a totally new layout for Android. It's in a support library, so you can use it, all the way back in older APIs. And basically, one, it has a really nice visual editor when you can actually finally drag and drop things and, set constraints how one view is related to another. It's a little bit like a relative layout, but a lot more advanced. And one nice thing about it is, if you had linear layouts and relative layouts, you had to use nesting. And at some point, you had views, and lots of layouts. That all takes time to, calculate at runtime. And with the constraint layout, everything, the view hierarchy is mostly flat. Everything is done in one pass. It's a lot faster. It's super fun to use. By the way, everything I talk about that's in preview, when you use it, when you have feedback, come back to me. Because obviously, there's some things that are still not working in constraint layout, but we're curious to hear how you use it and what problems you encounter. There's a new test recorder, finally in preview 3 of Android Studio 2.2. So if you're writing espresso tests for your apps, or if you just want to start, there's now an easy way to add tests. You basically launch your app in debug mode. There's like a separate window for the test recorder, and it records all the clicks that you do in your app. And after you finish, going through your app, writing the test, if you may, you then add an assertion, and that gets actually saved as an espresso test as a totally human-readable code. So you can go and edit it. You can, add idling resources. You can make it more complicated. But for generating base tests for your apps, it's a great tool, both for beginners and people already familiar with espresso. We have a great new APK analyzer. So at Google I/O, I gave a talk about how to make your APK size smaller, and it's one of the tools that will help you do just that. So I have this is an early version again. It's the first version of APK Analyzer that we're ready to share with you. And basically what you can do with it is browse the contents of the APK, browse the resources that are packaged in the APK, browse the Android manifest, the final one that gets generated from all your libraries and stuff, and finally browse the DEX files. So all the classes that get it packaged into your APK after proguarding, after removing all that's not necessary. And it shows you a few nice things. So it shows you the raw file size of an APK, but it also shows you an estimated download size because the Play Store actually compresses the APK when it sends it to the device. And even more, it shows you a breakdown of those download sizes for every file or every package in your archive. So you can go and look which things take up the most space in your APK. So that's really nice. And it's an early version, so we plan to do a lot more with the APK analyzer. And again, if you have any ideas, please let me know. And finally, there's a new PSD viewer, so Photoshop files, and you can import Photoshop files into vector drawables. Of course, Photoshop files that contain vectors, not bitmaps. And improvements to the NDK. If you're writing native code, you can now use CMake, which is the native toolchain for CLion, which is the base of our C++ support. And you can also use plain old NDK build projects. So that's for Studio, but making apps is nothing without a good distribution channel. So Play is always improving. There's lots of stuff coming in Play that you might not be aware of. We just announced at I/O. There's this new thing called the pre-launch report. You have to go and enable it in your console. But after you do that, after you upload an APK to the alpha or beta channel, after some time, after a few minutes, you will get this pre-launch report that will let you know the most important things about your app, about the APK that you just uploaded, to let you know if it's ready for prime time or not. So basically, it runs the Firebase test lab. So it runs your APK on real devices, on a matrix of real devices, and gives you a report about any problems, about any crashes. It gives you screenshots of how your app looks across these different screen sizes, languages, and so on and so on. So you can look at a glance if there's something you need to fix in your APK right now before actually publishing it. So it's a nice tool to that will let you know if you're trying to shoot yourself in the foot by uploading something that doesn't work. And there's lots of small things that we added over the past few months. So if you're using ProGuard, if you're annoyed that your stack traces are obfuscated and you had to use a manual tool to deobfuscate them from the Play Store, you can now actually upload your ProGuard mappings file to the Play Store, and all your error stack traces from your users will come deobfuscated by default. We have universal app campaigns, so an easy way to actually promote your app. We have acquisition tracking, so there's this whole panel that lets you know where your users are coming from and how they actually learn about your app and who downloads it. We finally can generate promo codes that you can give out to reviewers and sites and so on. And we also do some nice machine learning on user reviews. So we bring the most important information to you so that you don't lose the most important things that people talk about in reviews about your app. But there's another thing, apart from the Play Developer Console, which you actually see, and this is Play App Serving. So this is what happens behind the scenes, and we never actually talked about it up to a few months ago when the Play App Serving team started really fighting for those download sizes so that users don't have to download a lot of data when you update your apps or when you publish them for the first time. And just a few months ago, we added this download size to the Play Store. So we used to have different sizes in the Play Store before, but they were very ambiguous. So what does it mean for a user if an APK is like 50 meg? But we had Delta updates on the Play Store for a long time. Play Store is also gzipping your APKs. So the raw APK size didn't really mean anything. And from now on, users see exactly the amount of data they will have to spend to download your app or update your app. Which hopefully will drive you, developers, to push those sizes as low as possible because users now will be more aware of that. But anyway, to help you, we also introduced a new algorithm that compresses, that calculates better delta sizes for your updates. So you have an old APK and a new APK. The update size between those will be now smaller without you having to do anything. And it helps especially in one case. If you're using native libraries in your code, remember to put them uncompressed in the APK. This will make the APK a little bit bigger, but the update will be a lot smaller. We also released on our GitHub under Google Samples, an APK patch size estimator. So if you're tracking that, if you're interested in seeing how your update sizes are going from version to version, you can now estimate that from a command line tool that will perform the same algorithm on your APKs and tell you the estimated update size. And finally, we introduced APK as expansion files, compression, and patching. So if you're developing games, because it's games that use that feature mostly, you know that these files could be huge. They could be like a gigabyte in size of textures. And every time you updated those, your users had to actually download the whole thing. Now we have the same patching and delta mechanism for those as for APKs. And we're actually saving 1 petabyte of data for users a day, thanks to that. So now maybe for game developers, that will make it a little bit easier to update your apps and not be afraid that the users will have to download a lot of data. And finally, if you haven't used it, there's a new Play Developer Console Android app. Fully functional. Go ahead and give it a try. And finally, what's new on Android platform? So Android N. Just yesterday, I think, we released Developer Preview 4. You should probably have it on your devices by now. If not, you can sideload it. And we publish the files that you can sideload to your phones and update them manually. And with that, we also introduced the final SDK. So starting from now on, from this SDK, we cannot change anything. We cannot change any methods, any attributes, anything. This is set in stone. And thanks to that, we are also enabling upload of apps targeting API 24 to the Play Store. So you can, as of now, you can change your compile SDK version and target SDK version to 24 and upload those apps to the Play Store and start testing them with real users or on alpha beta channels or even in production, so that users on Developer Preview will be able to get your apps. But remember, while setting compile SDK version to 24 will probably not break anything, always, as always, when setting target SDK version to 24, all the behavior changes in the new Android version apply. So before you do that, you have to get your apps ready and you have to test them. And so I will discuss a few of those most important behavior changes that you need to be aware of before you actually start giving your users those APKs targeted at 24. So first of all, Project Volta has some improvements. Project Volta is our it's an initiative at Google that aims to reduce battery usage by the system and apps. So, last year I introduced, even here at the stage, that we are adding a doze mode into Marshmallow, which basically, after you put your device away, like on a coffee table or something, it sits there, no one's touching it. Instead of discharging and the app's running all the time, it actually prevents the app from running and only gives them this tiny window when they can access the network, when they can actually do something. And this year we're extending this doze mode to extend battery life even while the devices are in use. So if I have my phone in my pocket, the previous doze mode would never kick in because I keep moving around. The sensor, wouldn't detect that the phone is stationary. But now this doze mode light will work when the screen is off. So whenever the screen is off, even if the phone is moving, after some time we will turn on this light doze mode where apps cannot access network and all jobs and syncs are deferred. So that will hopefully fix the battery life issue for devices that you keep on you at all times and you keep on using. But it is something you have to test with your apps. And this doesn't mean the old doze mode is going away. They both work together. So first, we have when the screen turns off, we have this doze light, and then when you put your device away, we kick in the full doze. And nothing's really changing as far as guidance of how to deal with this comes for us. So for things that really need to be timely and instant, we suggest using GCM high priority messages that will wake your apps even in doze mode. Foreground services are exempt from those, same as in the previous version of Android. Although there was a bug where that didn't always work, we fixed that bug. So hopefully from now on it'll work every time. And finally, there's a whitelist. This is like the last resort. If your app has to absolutely work while DOS is on. You can apply for a whitelist, but be aware that there's only a few exceptions that we will make. They're listed in the documentation, and if you're outside of those use cases, your app will be removed from the Play Store if you apply for this whitelist. So just remember that. And the other thing is we did some background optimizations, which will also extend your battery a little bit, but it's more about memory. So on M, we saw lots of apps waking up at different times when they weren't really needed because they listened to all those broadcasts that the system produces, like, for example, connectivity change. And suddenly, if I walk out from DroidCon and my phone loses Wi-Fi and then connects to 3G, all those connectivity events would fire, and every app that listens to those events, for every app, we will have to create a process, create the broadcast receiver, handle that, and even if the app does nothing, that would completely thrash the memory, and all those processes spinning up and killing would just kill the performance of your phone. That's why in this version, we're getting rid of a few broadcasts, of a few system broadcasts that work like this. So first of them is connectivity change. You're no longer able to listen for that broadcast from a receiver registered in your manifest. If your app is already running, if you have a running component, and you register for this broadcast dynamically using context register receiver, you can still get it. But your app will not be woken up from the background when it's not running from a receiver registered in the manifest. So that's a big change. The thing we suggest very, very strongly, use Job Scheduler. Job Scheduler lets you run those background tasks that you need at the right moment with other background tasks. It will not deplete the user's battery. It will not thrash your phone's memory. It's better for everyone. And of course, the question developers always ask is, how do I use Job Scheduler if it's only available from API 21? Well, in Google Play Services, we have this thing called GCM Network Manager, which is almost the same thing as Job Scheduler. It's basically a backport for all the devices. And even now at I/O, we released a new version of that, which is called the Firebase Job Dispatcher. And it has a nicer API, I would say. And we'll probably go forward with developing Firebase Job Dispatcher more. For those of you who have never used Job Scheduler, it's really simple. You get a system service. You basically create a job info object that holds all the restrictions you put on your job. So if it needs to run when the phone is charging, if it needs to run only when the user is not paying for data, so if the user is on Wi-Fi, for example, and you just schedule that job, and the system will come back and run your service when the best time comes for that. The other two broadcasts that we're removing are new picture and new video. So I don't know if many of you use those broadcasts, but basically when the user is taking photos, after each photo, the system would trigger this and send this broadcast. There's a new picture available. There's a new photo. And every app that, for example, synchronizes your albums would go and take this photo and upload it to the cloud, which when the user is still taking photos was probably not the right thing to do, because all those apps would start spinning up and using the CPU and using network and everything, and the camera would just die on the user, and that wasn't a really good experience. So now we're getting rid of those as well, and because there was no real way to act on those new photos in the framework, we are extending the Job Scheduler API so that you can actually trigger jobs on content providers. So whenever there's a new item in a content provider, you can schedule a job that will run whenever there's a new thing. And again, it will not happen immediately. It will happen at the right time, and you just don't have to worry about it. Unfortunately, this API in Job Scheduler is only available from N and above, so from API 24 and above. And I don't think there's a version in GCM Network Manager or Firebase Job Dispatcher, but hopefully it'll come very soon. And if you're interested in both of those topics, so Vault optimizations and memory optimizations, I really suggest you go and listen and watch a talk from Google I/O. It's called Android Battery and Memory Optimizations. It's available on YouTube. And the people who did that talk talk a little bit more about our vision for the platform for the future. So if you want to learn about how we imagine the platform and background jobs and job scheduler will look in the future releases of Android, potentially, then this is very interesting talk. And if, again, about feedback, if you have any use cases that cannot be handled by the current state of APIs, and your app needs to do something that is not covered and will just not work, please let me know about it, because we are bringing feedback to the team for the next releases of Android. And there's been also a few small improvements in how job schedule works. And so, for example, before for any task that needed to run instantly, right now when the app is running, you would use an intent service. You're fine to do that. It's cool. Intent service can work for foreground apps. Don't worry. But if you want to use job scheduler for that as well, we are now prioritizing jobs that are coming from apps that are in the foreground. And also, we are optimizing jobs in the background as far as available RAM on the phone, on the device goes, and just not to thrash the phone again with all those processes spinning up. And there's a few other small breaking changes. These are the things you need to do before you target SDK 24 and start releasing your apps. So passing file URIs between apps. This was my pet peeve on the platform for a long time. Whenever I would use one app, another app from another developer, and try to share a photo between those two apps, about half of the time, things would just not work. If I have my file, my photo in the cloud, and the other app expects it to be on the device, on the internal memory, things would just break. And it was a bit of a chicken and egg problem. So who fixes their app first? The one sharing the photo or the one receiving the photo? And even big apps were really reluctant to fix this because they knew people would file bug reports against them for apps that received the photo and didn't work. Fortunately, this is now deprecated. It's fixed on the platform level. So if you target SDK 24, you can no longer pass file URIs between process boundaries. So if you create a file URI and share it in an intent somewhere to another app, you will get an exception. And the solution is just to use a file provider. It's in the support library. It's very easy to use. It creates content URIs for your files that your app owns and your app created. And then you share those content URIs, and the receiving app, and that can also be your app, should just implement content resolver open input stream on this content. And now you don't have to worry about permissions. You don't have to worry about reading from external storage. Things should just work. So please go ahead and fix your apps if you haven't moved to content URIs yet. And another thing, and I remember I was here on the stage last year and I was telling developers who use private APIs in our framework to not do that, because on M, a few apps broke when we switched the SSL library from OpenSSL to boring SSL. And I said, do not do this because things will break. And now they're breaking. You cannot use private APIs, private native APIs or private libraries that are embedded in the framework from your apps. So during developer preview, we will show this toast whenever you launch an app and access private libraries from the framework. But for apps that target 23 and lower. But for apps targeting 24, if you try to do that, your app will just break. So the solution is only use public APIs, and if you really need those libraries, you can compile them yourselves and include them in your app. Just don't try to dynamically open things that are in the framework but are not supposed to be opened by you. So these were the breaking changes. These are the things that you need to do, but there are also, this was pretty scary. Like, things will break, things will not work, but there are also some nice things in it, and these are the user-facing features. And so one thing developers were waiting for a long time was multi-window support. It's finally coming. It works nicely, I would say. I like it. There's not a lot you have to do. So every app that targets 24 will be multi-window enabled by default. And hopefully you will not disable this support. You will just work with it and not against it. There's no real changes you have to do to your app. You just have to make sure that you support the smaller sizes, smaller layouts, and the transitions between those sizes. And one important thing, even though two apps can be shown on the screen at the same time, only one app will be in the resumed state. So this will be the app that the user interacts with, and nothing is changing in the activity life cycle, but because we didn't have this situation before where two apps were on the screen, some video players, for example, would stop video playback in on pause, whereas now we recommend you do it in on stop. So if I'm playing a video in one app and I'm interacting with the other, I probably want the video to keep playing. So just remember, only one app is resumed, but your app can be stopped but still visible. There's a new thing called data saver. So before we could restrict background data on a per app basis. Now a user can do it on a per device basis. So it's a device-wide setting. And it takes away access to network from all apps on the device unless an app is whitelisted. This is nice for a user who's roaming, for example, or who's paying for every megabyte they download. But it's a little bit more difficult for you as app developers, right? But we are giving you an API where you can actually check the status of the setting device-wide, and you can also check if your app was whitelisted. It's not very difficult. We just ask for one thing. Please respect this setting, and even if your app is whitelisted, do use the API and reduce your data usage. So for example, if you're downloading huge images, if you see that the user has enabled data saver, and even though you were whitelisted, maybe you could download smaller images and save some data for the user. And also remember to always check if the network you're on is metered or not. So basically a metered network is one where the user potentially pays for every byte they download, whereas an unmetered network will be like a public Wi-Fi that's free. We have a new way to access external storage. Of course, there was a permission that you could ask before, but if your app really needed access to photos or just to music, and you had to ask the user, let me access all the contents of your SD card, oh, that wasn't a very good situation, and the user would be, would be right to decline it in some instances. So now with scoped folder access, you can actually just ask for access to one specific folder. So we created folders like photos, music, movies, podcasts, ringtones. And if your app just needs to access photos, you can ask just that. And what's even nicer, after you get access to that folder, you can use the normal, usual file APIs to access the contents of this folder. So you don't have to deal with like the storage access framework and all this confusing framework stuff. And it works pretty much as just like runtime permissions, although it's not a runtime permission. It's just a thing that the framework gives you. And finally, direct boot. This is a very underestimated feature of Android, I'd say, but it's a nice thing for developers who are working on messaging apps or alarm clocks. Basically, any app that needs to provide timely, important notifications to the user. And what it lets you do is it lets your app run just after the device has finished booting, but before the user has a chance to unlock their device for the first time with a pattern or PIN or password. It's a little bit difficult to implement. So now, starting from N, every app will have two storage areas for their private data. One is called the device storage, and one is called the credential protected storage. And to make your app run during direct boot mode, you have to make sure that that the data that you need just to run the smallest part of your app that will run before the lock screen is dismissed is stored in device protected storage, whereas the credential protected storage is available only after the user unlocks from the boot screen. I wrote a blog post explaining this in detail. There will also be a dev byte. So if you're writing a messaging app or if you're writing an alarm clock and you have to make sure that these messages and these alarms will fire even if the user forgets to unlock their phone, please go ahead and read the blog post and implement direct boot. We also have a new notification style. If you're using the platform APIs to create your notifications, so the big inbox style and all the other styles that we give you, there's not much you have to do. If you're customizing your notifications, you'll have to make sure that with the new background, with the new style, everything will fit and look well. One thing to note is now we show the app's name here. So for for those of you who, hopefully not, but if you are spamming your users with notifications, please don't do this, and the user will now have a really easy way of telling which app is actually doing that. Two more things coming in notifications. You might know them from Android Wear. Now on bigger devices, on phones and tablets, starting with Android N, we have the same APIs for direct reply and for bundling notifications as on Android Wear. So if you already implemented those, it should work. If not, please do. If you have lots of messages, like for example in Gmail here, a user can then expand and have a notification per message. Or here on the video on the left, I get a Hangouts message, I can reply inline without opening the app, and I can continue the conversation just from the reply action item there on the notification. There's a few other things that you can implement. Quick settings tiles. These are the quick settings that you open from the top of the screen from the notification shade. You can finally implement your own. It's a very easy API. You implement the service, override two methods, customize an icon, provide an action. That's it. You can have your own quick settings tile. The only thing is the user has to add your tile. So you can't spam the notification shade with tiles for your app. The user has to go and actually add your tile to the notification shade. You can now, a user can now adjust the display size for the whole device. So you have to make sure that your apps work on different densities. So even if you are testing your apps on very, very small displays, because there are almost no phones like that, please create an emulator with a very small display size and check if all your layouts display correctly. Multiple locales. So we used to have just one locale per device. Now a user, like a multilingual one, can specify many languages that they speak, and your app can actually use an API, a platform API, to check which languages your user likes and uses, and customize the content that you show. So for a search app, for example, you could show search results in those languages. And direct boot, I talked about. There's lots of other developer features in N. So we have Java 8 languages features. You can use lambdas. You can use static interface methods. Unfortunately, only lambdas are backwards compatible. All the other things from Java 8 are N only. There's a new ICU4J public API. So that used to be hidden in the framework. If you don't know what it is, you probably never needed it. It's basically for working with languages and text. There's a key store attestation. So you can, if you're working on security apps, on banking apps, now there's a stronger way to make sure that the keys that you're using in your app are actually stored in the hardware, in the hardware element on the device, and that no one tampered with them. And also declarative security config. So people used to shoot themselves in the foot by creating SSL code by hand or copying it from Stack Overflow. And usually the top-rated answer was almost always wrong, unfortunately, in this case, is you never re-implement security. That's the rule. And now we can do it declaratively. So there's a way of specifying the certificates, the keys that you use in XML, and so that you don't have to write your own code, and there's no way for you to actually break it. And there's a new, like I said, there's a new signature scheme. So if you're using the new Android Studio tools, you will get faster install times. Also, there's no ahead-of-time compilation. That makes the install time even faster. There's nothing you really have to do with it. Just be aware, and you benefit from it as developers. And we still have some time for Q&A, I think. So
yes, we have. Yes, we do. Thank you.
And I welcome.
Thank you for sharing all this with us. Yeah. Number one, number two, number three.
Just one thing.
Okay.
Let's take quick questions now, but if you have longer feedback for all the things that I mentioned, do find me. I'll be hanging around all day.
We have 5 minutes for Q&A.
Java 8 features means full Java 8 with functional programming, or just what you mentioned?
Sorry, full
map and reduce, so the full and streams and so on, or just the lambdas?
So like I said, we have lambdas that are actually created during compilation, and they're backwards compatible. There's static interface methods. There's multiple annotations on a method, but that is only in N. And also, I think there's a few packages in the framework, but I would have to confirm which ones. So we have probably some of the functional stuff, but not everything. Definitely not everything from Java 8. That's why we say just some features, right?
Yeah, my question is, will declarative security configuration will it be backported like a security configuration, or will it just be N-on?
I'm pretty sure it's N only.
Where was number 3? Okay. You're so quick, we can even take number 4, maybe 5.
The detection of a metered connection, is this done by marking it from the UI, or does Android do this?
There's two ways. So I think by default the 3G, 4G connection is metered. A Wi-Fi connection is unmetered. But if a user is using hotspots, like an Android hotspot or so on, there's actually a UI for the user to mark which of them are metered. And I think there's even some automatic detection. So for some hotspots created on phones, I think this information is detected.
Any more questions? Do I see any more? Oh, yeah. Here. I'm going to get paid by the mile.
Hi. What about instant apps? When is it going to be available?
Well, I can't say more than was announced at I/O. I don't think we announced the date. There's this on developers.android.com. There's a page where you can sign up if you want to take part in it. But yeah, it's not something I can talk about right now. But I'm super excited for it to be coming. It's going to be awesome.
Was it that? Yeah, that was it. Thanks again,
Okay.
Wojtek.
Thanks all, and
Thanks for
find me
sharing.
later.